Sometimes the most terrible and heinous acts are committed by those you'd least expect. The UK has experienced a number of cases in which some of the most twisted acts imaginable have been carried out by kids. Here is our list of the 3 most shocking young killers in British history.
A 12-year-old girl to kill an 18-year-old, a child to kill an adult who they'd never met before, is unique is the only word.
June 7th, 1992. 18-year-old Katie Ratcliffe is walking home from her favorite nightclub in the small town of Camberley, England. Katie had been partying with friends as she often did on a Saturday night.
At the end of the evening, through a misunderstanding which turned out to be tragic, Kate's friends left for home without her. A few hours later, Kate was dead.
Whilst walking home in the dead of night, Katie was attacked by a savage killer. Her body was then moved to a new location and dumped by a cemetery wall.
27 odd stab and slash wounds to various parts of her body, head, shoulders, heart, liver, genitalia.
Katie was an apprentice hairdresser. She had no obvious enemies and wasn't involved in any known criminal activity.
Kate was my only sister. She loved going out, she loved dancing, she had a lot of friends.
The teenager's wounds were shocking, with some of the stab wounds being so violently inflicted that they had gone straight through her body. Both Katie's anus and genitalia had been stabbed and mutilated. Despite some items of jewelry being stolen, police assumed the murder was carried out by a man in a sexually motivated attack.
You just don't associate that with a woman, let alone with a child.
Police carried out a massive investigation into this seemingly random attack, questioning everyone they could who was at the nightclub that night. After weeks of searching for the killer, police had nothing to go on, and the case went cold. Fast forward 2 years when 13-year-old Anne-Marie Clifford is stabbed in the back in the bathroom of Collingwood College Comprehensive School, Surrey. Thankfully, the assault was stopped when a group of students entered the room and intervened. The attacker was 14-year-old Sharon Carr, a troubled student with a history of violence and drug use. The knife wound she had inflicted punctured Clifford's lung, leaving her clinging to life. She later recovered and told police that Carr had laughed while stabbing her. Carr was arrested and questioned by police. She told them she enjoyed stabbing cats and had even once beheaded a dog. She was then sent to a medical assessment center where she tried to strangle 2 members of the staff. The teenager was held in various psychiatric units but had to be transferred to an all-boys unit after regularly assaulting other girls. Carr was transferred around numerous young offenders institutions until finally the discovery of her diary revealed a shocking twist.
There were diary entries referring to KR, Katie Ratcliffe's initials obviously, in which she basically boasted about her involvement in the killing. She actually relished it.
Writings and drawings revealed information about Katie's murder that only the killer could have known. Carr had also described her sexual excitement during the killing, writing, "If only I could kill you again. I promise I would make you suffer more this time, and your terrified screams turned me on."
This was a very violent attack. This was an attack which went way beyond the needs of killing someone. This was meant to inflict harm. Sharon was out for obliteration.
Detectives questioned Sharon after the notes were discovered. She reportedly laughed while admitting to the crime. In May 1996, 4 years after the killing, Carr was charged with Katie's murder. During the trial, she showed no remorse. Carr was found guilty in March of 1997. The decision to charge Carr with murder rather than manslaughter made her the youngest female murderer in British history. She was sentenced to a minimum of 14 years.
Sharon Carr left the dock. She was smiling. She may spend the rest of her life behind bars.
The case gained nationwide attention, with many wondering how a 12-year-old girl was capable of such a horrific attack. She was labeled the devil's daughter by the British media. After police investigated Carr's upbringing, it was clear that her childhood had played a role in her violent behavior.
She was born into what we regard as a sort of poverty-stricken environment, very modest home. But I think what became clear was that she had a dysfunctional childhood.
Carr emigrated to the UK at 7 years old from Belize after her mother married a British man. The marriage ended after her mother poured boiling fat over her husband in a horrific domestic violence incident. Despite this early household violence, things began well. She was described as sociable and likable, preferring the company of older boys. But despite her good start, Carr's behavior gradually declined. She was put into foster care for a short time as her mother struggled to get by and received mental health therapy. Much of her time was spent on the street, surrounded by violence. Even as a child, it became a normal part of Sharon's day. Sharon's mother also practiced voodoo, introducing her to the practice from an early age. Her mother performed rituals in which animals would be sacrificed and claimed to have supernatural abilities. Sharon soon took up the practice too, carrying out animal sacrifices and attempting to inflict harm to others through prayers. Since being locked up, Carr has continued to assault staff and other inmates, being moved around often. Her minimum tariff expired more than 10 years ago, but her behavior has kept her behind bars. However, in August 2023, it was reported that a parole board was reconsidering Carr's parole and she could be released soon. After 30 years behind bars, is it time that this troubled woman had another chance at freedom? Or is Sharon Carr too dangerous and disturbed to even be freed? Number 2. Aaron Campbell. Our next murder is potentially even more disturbing. A violent, sexually fueled crime inflicted upon the most innocent victim imaginable. On the 2nd of July 2018, 16-year-old Aaron Campbell invited some friends over to his house on the Isle of Bute, Scotland. After some heavy drinking and an argument with his mom, Campbell became upset. A worried friend offered to stay over, but Campbell declined, instead heading out to purchase marijuana. Receiving no reply from his dealers, Campbell decided to instead break into one of their homes and steal the drugs. Armed with a kitchen knife, Campbell snuck into Robert McPhail's home, where he was staying with his parents, girlfriend, and daughter. He had bought cannabis from both Robert and his girlfriend Tony in the past. After entering the house looking for drugs, Campbell instead discovered 6-year-old Alicia McPhail asleep in her bed. The teenager later said to investigators, "All I thought about was killing her once I saw her." Campbell lifted 6-year-old Alicia out of bed and carried her out of the house to a secluded location. He then raped and murdered her before throwing his clothes into the sea and going home.
At 3:45 in the morning, he has a shower, then leaves home wearing only shorts and carrying clothes. 7 minutes later, Aaron Campbell returns, still only wearing shorts but no longer carrying the clothes. 6 minutes later, he's changed clothes again and sprints out with a torch. At 4:07 a.m, finished covering his tracks, he returns to go to bed.
Alicia was reported missing by her family at 6:23 a.m. Frantic search ensued, with the whole island on the lookout for Alicia. On seeing several missed calls from Campbell made the night before, Robert's girlfriend Tony tried to reach him. After she explained that Alicia was missing, Campbell replied, "Oh damn, I'm sure she's not went too far, X." 3 hours later, Alicia's body was discovered.
The 16-year-old left Alicia in these woods. She was found naked with her pyjamas lying beside her, and she sustained 117 injuries. The pathologist examining her body said some of them were unlike anything he'd ever seen.
After checking her own CCTV, Aaron's mother made the terrible discovery that her own son may be behind the attack. She reported it to police, and Aaron was arrested on the 4th of July 2018. Answering no comment to all the questions asked, Campbell was charged with rape and murder and remained in custody. During the trial, Campbell claimed that Robert's girlfriend Tony had slept with him that night before murdering the 6-year-old. He also claimed that she had used a condom to plant his semen on the body and frame him. Because of his age, Campbell's identity was hidden during the trial. Due to the nature of his crimes, however, he was later judged as an adult.
The judge today took into account that if there was ever a case in which he should exercise his discretion to allow that, then this was it.
Despite his claims of innocence, the jury found Campbell guilty. He was sentenced to a minimum of 27 years for his crimes. Reports from a forensic psychologist have since claimed that Campbell has confessed to the crime in detail. He reportedly told the psychologist that he was quite satisfied with the murder and that it took everything to stop laughing during the trial. Psychologists and criminologists have attempted to understand what may have caused a 16-year-old to carry out such a horrific crime. Many have looked to his upbringing, which contained elements of physical and emotional abuse. He had also been tested for ADHD and had a history of self-harm and depression. Aaron Campbell is now 21 and is set to be assessed before being moved to an adult jail in the coming months. Our third and final case took place in Colchester, Essex in 2014. When a 15-year-old schoolboy approached 33-year-old James Atfield as he lay on the ground in a local park. The schoolboy pounced on the man, stabbing him over 100 times before fleeing the scene. Paramedics attended to Atfield's wounds but were unable to save his life. Police later decided to withhold details of Atfield's injuries from the media as they were too gruesome to describe.
I don't think that there is any clear motive for what has happened to James, and we would appeal to anybody who knows anything about this terrible murder to come forward and speak to the police.
3 months later, the body of 31-year-old student Nahid Almania was found abandoned in an overgrowth near her home in Colchester. She had been stabbed in her abdomen, both eyes, before finally the brain.
She has been murdered in a way that can only be termed a brutal and savage attack.
The killings both took place in broad public spaces where passerbys were likely. Many believed them to be the work of a serial killer, with police launching an extensive investigation. 70 locals were questioned in connection to the killings, one of which was schoolboy James Fairweather. However, after providing an alibi, the teenager was released and received no further questioning. For almost a year, nothing happened. The case went cold, and the police had no solid leads. Then finally, in May 2015, a teenage boy was spotted loitering in the early hours of the morning by a concerned dog walker.
Obviously I got close enough, so when he looked at me, I looked back at him, I felt really sort of scared, panicked. I turned around, went back on where I was, and that's when I obviously decided I needed to call the police.
The police arrived and arrested the teenager. It was now 16-year-old James Fairweather. He was wearing rubber-gripped gloves and carrying a knife.
Seen here, moments after his arrest, he had on latex gardening gloves, a key part of the uniform he always wore when he was going to kill.
Fairweather admitted to killing both Atfield and Almania, claiming that he'd been possessed by the devil and that voices told him he had to make a sacrifice.
Some of the voices were talking to me, you need to make a sacrifice or we're going to come and get you, you need to do it. And I saw him, it was laying on the grass, like that, it was like that, just fast asleep, was where he was drunk. Then he goes, he's the one, do it. So I went up to him, can I stand up? Like,
yes.
Went up to him, stood over like that, and that. So I stabbed him first there, and I'd done it a few times. While I was doing that, my voices were laughing and laughing and laughing.
The teenager had been planning a third murder the day he was arrested. He later told psychologists the voices had told him to maim prostitutes and burn infants.
If I'd have gone in 5 minutes later, which is what I already knew, where he was in that bush, I know he'd have got me from behind, and I know that. And yeah, that's the most horrific part.
During his trial, Fairweather's name was not disclosed due to his age. He pleaded guilty of 2 counts of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He was found guilty of 2 counts of murder in April 2016 and sentenced to a minimum of 27 years. Thanks for watching this episode of Crime 101. Be sure to subscribe for more.